I never had a Super Nintendo as a kid. I rarely ran into one actually. I remember playing F-Zero at a classmate's house, and Super Mario World at the toy store. I think I played The Lion King at some point too. I really discovered the Super Nintendo much later with the advent of emulators. Later still, I bought a real Super Nintendo in 2008, but sold it a few months later unfortunately. My current Super Nintendo collection, or Super Famicom collection in this case, I have thanks to Super Famicom games being sold for cheap on Swedish eBay. Couple that with a bit of regular eBay, and here we are. Super Mario World is a natural starting point of course, and the Japanese version interestingly enough says Super Mario Bros. 4 on the cartridge. Super Mario Collection is the Japanese Super Mario All-Stars. Unfortunately it has a very yellowed backside though. Yoshi's Island, the Rayman origins of its time, wasn't called Super Mario World 2 in Japan. Super Mario Kart is another one of those required Super Nintendo games. Although personally one of my least favorite versions, the very least being the GBA version. Leaving Mario but sticking with Nintendo, I have Kirby Super Deluxe, also known as Kirby Superstar. Kirby Superstar is billed as having 8 games in one, but to me it's more like one game split into 3 parts and then 5 minigames. In any case, it's a great game. Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, sometimes referred to as Zelda 3, is another Nintendo classic everybody knows about. The text is in Japanese, but I can get by anyway. The Super Nintendo generation was when Capcom was still a hit-making machine, and of the 6 Mega Man games on it, I have Mega Man X and Mega Man X2. I managed to beat Mega Man X, but found Mega Man X2 to be a lot harder. In the Mega Man X games you always start out handicapped by not having full health, but in X2 the heart tanks are harder to find, and without them I couldn't beat a single Maverick. I have 2 Kunio games. The 2 beat-em-up ones, I mean. Shodai Neketsu Koha Kunio-kun, which feels a bit like River City Ransom 2 but not as good, and Shin Neketsu Koha Kunio Tachi no Banka, to me the superior game. Then I have Jerry Boy, a platformer developed by Game Freak of Pokemon fame. I saw this game played on Game Center CX and I thought it looked like fun, but I haven't quite gotten the hang of the wall climbing mechanic yet. Then there's the Great Battle 4. This is an interesting series, an SD crossover between Gundam, Ultraman and Kamen Rider. The first game was an overhead game, 2 and 3 were beat-em-ups, the 5th game a mix of platformer and Wild Guns style shooter, and the 6th game as well as the 4th that I have are platformers. The Great Battle 4 has good graphics, all the playable characters play a bit differently. It's a good game. The only problem for me is that the bosses take place in giant robot mode, and I haven't quite figured it out. As you know from before, I have a Super Game Boy and a Super Game Boy controller. Also, I got a European regular controller, because the Japanese one has a very short cord. Lastly, I just recently got a hold of these 2 excellent games, Final Fantasy VI and Super Mario RPG. Getting these in Japanese is easy, but these are special. They have the English versions on Japanese cartridges. I got them from a Swedish online store that sells Japanese games and do modifications. Super Mario RPG is just the American version on a Japanese cartridge, but Final Fantasy VI is a fan translation, which at first I didn't like, but I think I'm going to play the game like this anyway. I'm going to miss classic lines like Son of a Submariner, but having a new translation might make me experience the game in a slightly different way, which to someone like me who's already finished the game several times, probably is a good thing. My Super Nintendo collection isn't that big as you can see, but I'm going to expand it with time. I've probed some of the depths of the Famicom games catalog, but while I don't know as much about the Super Famicom one, I'm sure there's a lot to find.